Hello, 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 and welcome to Tech Tab episode 4. I'm your host, Ryan Carson. If you are excited about AI and tech, this is the show for you. So today we're going to make you smarter with our Nerd Alert segment on mixture of experts. Then we'll hit up the biggest stories in our Techbuzz news roundup. And then after that, we'll go deep on the future of AI agents and finish with a fun fact or fiction game that you all can play in the chat. So real quick, please just hop in the comments, tell us your location, where you're calling in from, and ideally your favorite just can't live without AI tool. Pop it in the comments. We'll call it out. I already see that Kevin's piping up about VO3 as his favorite tool. I can agree. Amazing stuff. So we have two really great guests today with us, Alessio Fanelli and Alex Reibman. So Alessio is the co-host of the fantastic Latent Space podcast and a partner and CTO, which often isn't combined, at the venture firm Decibel VC. So Alessio, good to have you on the show. My burning question for you is, with your kind of CTO hat and your partner hat on, what's the one AI trend that you think is just totally overhyped, and then what's one that you just think is massively underhyped?
Let's start with underhyped. I would say authorization of agents. So I think everybody is focused on MCP and auth as just kind of like a login thing, but we'll talk about it later maybe. But I think the biggest worry that people have about agents is like, who knows what it's going to do? And I think today, all the infrastructure is kind of all or nothing. Either it can do everything or it can do nothing. So I think the whole space is very underhyped. And then overhyped, I would say open source models, just because everybody loves to talk about them, but then nobody loves to use them. So to me, that's always kind of like the number one indicator of something that is overhyped.
Spicy takes. We need like a spicy takes graphic reshow. So, all right, open source models definitely overhyped, and Alessio's might like it. So good to have you on the show. We've got another amazing guest with us, Alex Reibman. He's the co-founder and CEO of AgentOps.ai. It's a company focused on building tools for the new wave of AI agents. He's also the founder of the AI consultancy agency. So, Alex, you're deep in the world of AI agents. You probably dream about AI agents, I imagine. What's the most surprising thing that you've learned about building and deploying them in the actual real world?
Well, there's been a lot of things, but I have to say the most surprising thing, just period, is how fast the models have been moving to the point where in the early stages of things, people were building a lot of tooling and guardrails and kind of mechanisms to control these agents. But now all you really have to do is give them the tools and they figure out on their own with their own reasoning. So it's really amazing to see that go from concept to idea very quickly.
Yep. Yeah, gosh, it's wild. I mean, and then we saw, with massive drops in the O3 pricing, which we're going to talk about, probably even more people are using it for agents. So never a dull minute, I'd say, in AI. So today's segments, we've got a bunch of exciting stuff. We're going to start with Nerd Alert, and then we're going to go to Techbuzz, which is all of our news. We're going to go into deep dive. We talk about agents and prod, and then we're going to do our audience game. So let's get interactive right away, though. Everybody in the audience, please, again, drop in where you're calling from and what your favorite AI tool is in the comments. We're going to call out some of those. But let's get started with Nerd Alert and teach you a little something. So let's head to Nerd Alert. All right, it's time for Nerd Alert, where we break down a tech concept. Today, our term is mixture of experts, or MOE. No, it's not a new ice cream flavor. It's an AI model architecture that's making waves. So mixture of experts is a machine learning approach where instead of one giant model handling everything, you have a bunch of smaller specialized models, which we call experts, and a smart gating network like a dispatcher. It figures out which expert is the best for each piece of input. And in simple terms, it's like having a team of specialists rather than a jack of all trades model. So how does it work? Well, when a task comes in, the gating network activates only a few relevant experts instead of firing up the entire model. So for example, one expert might focus on language, another math, another on coding, etc. And then the gate sends the problem to the right expert. So why does it matter? Well, the design lets models scale huge, think of tens of billions of parameters without proportional slowdowns, because only the needed experts need to work on each request. So MOE models save a ton of compute They respond faster. It's basically a clever way to get both brains and speed, a larger overall capacity, but you just don't have to pay full price. So real world use, the concept has been around since 1990s, actually, but it's back in the spotlight now because it's being used and it's very effective. So in fact, some state-of-the-art AI systems like OpenAI's GPT-4, it's rumored uses MOE, Mistral's Mixtral 7B, employ MOE, and more. So any questions about MOE, pop them in. We'll answer those in the comments. But I am very excited about MOE. It makes a lot of sense, actually. You're sort of spinning up the right neurons for the right tasks. So excited to do a little nerd alert. Also seeing a couple folks in the comments. Madison, thanks for popping in from Austin. She's using Gemini the most. Actually, a little pop quiz. Alessio, what's your model of choice right now?
O3 Pro. Boring.
All right, fair. Alex, favorite model right now?
I'd also agree O3 Pro for casual use, but it's Claude 4 Opus for code.
Oh, interesting. Man, Opus is expensive for coding though, so I guess you've got a big credit card. So, all right, we're going to keep going. So let's dive into Techbuzz, which is our news segment, and let's chat about the news. Techbuzz time. All right, so we're going to blitz through all the big stories of the day. There's a lot going on. We're excited to dive into 5 or 6 stories. The first story is OpenAI slashing their O3 model cost by 80%. So we've got them essentially saying, hey, we want to deliver this model as affordably as possible. It's the most advanced reasoning model. It's only $2 per million input tokens and $8 per million output tokens, down 80% from previous rates. It's also introduced a higher performance O3 Pro, which our amazing guest just mentioned, signaling a push to make top tier AI models more affordable for devs. This drastic price drop lowers the barrier for startups and engineers 100%. I think they're trying to undercut the other labs here with this. So my question for the audience is, number one, who's using O3 right now and for what task? Give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're using O3, maybe what you're using it for. And then I want to head to our guests to ask a couple questions. So Alessio, what's your prediction about how this massive price drop is going to affect startups building in AI?
They'll need less of my money. I think it's great. I think it unlocks, there's kind of two ways to think about it. One is things that are already built on O3 obviously are cheaper. So ideally that gets passed on to the consumer. I would say consumers today are already getting subsidized by most of the app companies anyway. So I think if anything, they're going to get a little more margin. But also think this adds the additional checks that you can use with these models. I think one example is RAG. Like a lot of people have been doing traditional, retrieval based on embeddings and whatnot. I've seen a few agent companies, especially in things like financial services and things like that, that are using models to read on a document by document basis instead, and kind of extracting things that matter from there. So I think cutting the cost of these models kind of enables a lot of these more high IQ things to be done at a cheaper cost instead of having to use 4.0 or some of the smaller models that are maybe not as good. So I think it's great. Super excited.
Yeah. Wow. Just more intelligence for a cheaper price. It's like, who doesn't love that? Alex, what kind of impact do you think O3 specifically dropping the price is going to have on the agentic world?
Yeah, we like to call these upgrades in the smart defaults. So in particular, with our platform, we see a lot of new developers who are entering the ecosystem for the first time or developing agents as a first go. And generally speaking, people go with kind of like the fastest, cheapest model to begin with. And I think what we've seen a lot of is people were trying out GPT 3.5 Turbo for the longest time, and the performance was not quite there. But as soon as GPT 4.0 Mini came out, the performance gains were quite dramatic, and we saw a lot less people get frustrated and try to quit earlier. And now with O3 Pro or O3, the price cut, I think that a lot of people will turn this on by default, immediately see the value, and continue to invest time and resources into it.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know about you all, but whenever I talk to ChatGPT now, just in the app on my phone, I use O3 if I have time, because I can tell the intelligence difference. But everybody I talk to that's not in AI every day just doesn't understand the difference between these models at all. I'm just kind of curious when that's going to change. But I feel on the API side, clearly, this price drop is going to unlock just way smarter apps, where the user of the app isn't having to think about what model they're using. Us devs are doing that for them. So before we move to the next story, which is on another model, let's touch on a little bit more on O3. Alessio, are you seeing people generally choose certain labs models at the moment in prod, or is it just all over the map?
Yeah, I think it's all over the map. I think both of the labs are getting better at kind of like a startup relations, so to speak. So I think there's a lot more. I know OpenAI has kind of been ahead of it as far as giving startups early access to model previews and things like that. It takes a little time to change reasoning models, more than it took kind of like the traditional chat completions model. So I think there's a little more lock-in today, but all the startups are like, hey, like, one, what's like the lab that is going to listen to me the most when I need help? And two, where can I get the most help and credits to start with? I think OpenAI did a great job with the Microsoft partnership to get a lot of credits to Microsoft for startups, which Anthropic doesn't have. But there's not a lot of brand loyalty, I would say. I think, when Sonnet 3.7 came out, it was kind of like Anthropic is so back, and then now everybody loves OpenAI. I'm sure that's going to change again in 2 months whenever 4.1 or 4.2, whatever they want to call it, comes out. So people are just excited to build no matter what model it's on.
Yeah, I do feel like my loyalty is literally my constants file, where I switch out, which model am I using, and it changes all the time. Alex, are you seeing any particular loyalty to any particular lab right now across your agents, or no?
Yes. So with our platform, we support developers who are trying to monitor and test their AI agents. That's the product called AgentOps. And we get to see which large language model providers these users are starting with and evolving towards. So overwhelmingly, for developers do prefer the OpenAI ecosystem. But we have been seeing a bit of a trend where Gemini class models have been really kind of entering the scene here. And just to also add some more color to this, what we've seen a lot of is most developers really like the GPT-4o model. It's quite effective for most tasks, and it seems to get things done quite well. But for the more advanced reasoning, they don't go to O3, they actually go to Gemini 2.5 Pro. And a handful of users, I wouldn't say an overwhelming number of them, are playing around with DeepSeek for their reasoning capabilities. But kind of the heavy lifting doesn't be seen to be going by OpenAI at this moment. That might change soon, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Wow. It changes so fast. And I think for coding, I'm still primarily using Sonnet 4 as kind of my daily driver. I've noticed like practical things like, editing a specific line in a very large file. Sonnet 4 really nails it, whereas Gemini 2.5 Pro, even the new one, is struggling a little bit. Like there's kind of these day-to-day realities, but it might switch, in a week. Right. So, all right. So there we have it, everybody. O3 massively dropping its prices. Most interesting probably for all the devs that are building on top of it versus the consumers in it. So on that note, our next news story is also a model story. Google is upgrading Gemini 2.5 Pro. So they released an upgraded version of this. It's 0605, I think, technically. And they're rolling it out as the stable release across the board. They say it's their most intelligent model, boasts significant gains on both coding and reasoning benchmarks. They are making it their stable GA version across the board. Actually, today, Logan Kilpatrick announced that. So devs can start using Gemini 2.5 Pro via Google Vertex or AI Studio. They also have something new called thinking budgets, which is interesting. So you can control those costs on the reasoning side. They're saying that for teams, this model offers cutting edge performance, accessible on Google's Cloud's platform, and it they're saying it provides a good alternative to other LLMs. So everybody in the audience, let us know which models you're using right now. What's your favorite? And I want to go to Alex and talk a little bit more about, are you seeing any specific differences since Google upgraded Gemini 2.5 Pro on the agentic side of things yet? Or is it not really noticing yet?
Been seeing a lot of new adoption with 2.5 Pro. But it is actually a bit of a split, which is once they're in the Google ecosystem, they love playing with 2.5 Pro, and for smaller tasks, they actually go with Flash. So the Flash models do see a lot of mix-in with the agents we've been seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And all their 2.5 Pro models have 1 million context. Is that correct?
I would have to look at the model card, but I think that's right.
I think it's right. So Alessio, on the context side, do you think as soon as, a Sonnet 4 or any of the OpenAI models release 1 million token context, that everything will change, or is that not going to matter?
That is a good question. I think that's like the age-old debate of like, do you need RAG or do you just need a bigger context window?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say most people are limited by context window size. I think there's maybe like the limitation of like context utilization, if anything. Is like, maybe most people realize that putting 1 million tokens there is not as effective as cherry picking the best 200,000 tokens to put in the context. So, but I think that will come. That will come soon, because Sam Altman said it at the Dev Day Fireside Chat that 1 million context was like maybe a year or two away. So that's coming. I think the question is like, infinite context. That was maybe one of the things people were talking about before. I don't think you can really get there, with current architectures, and it's also unclear whether or not you actually need it. But I think it's always a discussion that people like to have.
Yeah, we all like to talk about context. I never thought I'd say the word model or context like so much in my entire life if you would have gone back 3 years ago. So we got some comments from the crowd. Kevin is loving AI Studio. I agree. Like, I actually use AI Studio a lot these days, and I'm just like, hey, I just want to pop in, a fairly large context task and get it for free, basically. And Tame's Craziness is saying they use VS Code and AI Studio primary tabs, also commenting on my out of time license plate, which you get bonus points if you know what movie that came from. So, okay. So we covered Gemini 2.5 Pro. Let's roll to our next news story. This one's coming from Anthropic. They launched Claude Gov, which is an AI model specifically for government use. It's a custom large language model built specifically for U.S. national security and defense customers. These models can operate in classified environments and were developed with feedback from the government. It's designed to meet real-world missions. By tailoring Claude AI for security, sensitive contexts, Anthropic is addressing a niche demand. Agencies and industries requiring advanced AI that complies with super strict data requirements, reliability standards, and more. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. So, question for the crowd. How are you using AI in your job right now? And do you need specialized AI models, or can you use them out of the box? Alessio, I want to go to you on this one. How do you think the AI startup landscape will change with these kind of specialized models, or are they basically irrelevant to most startups?
I guess the question is whether or not it is a specialized model or if it's just a specialized inference stack. I don't know how much of the model actually changed, but the government also signed a $200 million contract with OpenAI. So maybe they also think it doesn't really matter what the model is. They just want to have models to use. Yep. I would say, yeah, to me, it's more about the environment. And I think especially with agents, we're seeing more of that, where the environment is just as important as the model. The model can be smart, but can it fit within my requirements? So I think this is more of a signal of that, of, hey, it's great that the API costs $2 per million tokens, but actually I need it to be secure. I need it to deploy in the Pentagon and like an air gap network. There's like, you're basically paying to get the weights of their data centers and put them in a safer place. Which is a great business model because it's kind of like not the incremental cost. You already did all the pre-training. So, and I'm sure there's some fine tuning on like, response adherence and kind of like voice and tone and things like that. But I'm assuming that's like a very small percentage compared to like the investment Anthropic and OpenAI are making on like serving these models in secure ways.
Yep. Yeah, keeping it secure is actually the main point. I know. I think most companies are not even thinking about the most optimal model. They're thinking about security and privacy, right? So I think you're right. The opportunity is probably in deploying these things in a secure, reliable, trackable way with whatever intelligence we already have. Getting some comments from the crowd. We asked folks, how are they using AI today? Chelsea said, punching up emails and helping kickstart brainstorms. I love that. I feel like that's probably like 99% of information workers now. So I love that. Alex, do you think that we're going to see more and more agents deployed inside these hyper private secure environments, or are we just really far from that right now?
It's already happening now. I wouldn't say maybe as hyper private as the federal government, but we do have a lot of users who are playing around with open source models. In particular, they're playing around with Mistral, they're playing around with DeepSeek, and they're doing it for specific privacy heavy regulated industries such as healthcare. So we've seen engineers at hospital networks who are building proof of concepts for agents that can help with surgeries, with administration tasks, so on and so forth.
Wow.
And they really do kind of need this privacy layer in that they don't really trust the clouds. You can't send things out of the box, and they have enough kind of in-house compute and data centers that they can get the stuff on the go.
Yep. Yeah. Gosh. I know. Obviously, at Intel, we care very much about privacy and security as we think about silicon, and we have to think about that, right? And I assume a lot of enterprise companies that really is a non-starter for them if they can't, absolutely track and deploy a secure, source of data. So interesting to see how this kind of shakes out. So interesting. We got some comments from the crowd. Tame Craziness says, I don't think models matter as much as the prompts, which I think is spot on. A lot of people they have enough intelligence. They just need to be able to use it where they are. And then Madison is saying that they use it to analyze and compare large reports, organizing rough notes into more concise and action-oriented outputs. Love it. So, all right. So that was our news story on Anthropic going all in with secure government models, which is exciting. Next news story is about image generation. So Stability AI released Stable Diffusion 3 Medium as open source, which you can download now and use from Hugging Face. Stability launched this, I think it was on June 10th. And the idea is it creates advanced text to image and that you can really run it on consumer grade GPUs locally. The model's pretty small. It's only 2.5 billion parameters, and it's open sourced with a permissive license. You can use it for commercial use, non-commercial use. I think it's pretty exciting. It delivers pretty good image quality and realism. It seems to handle text okay. And it'll be interesting to see kind of where this plays out. So question for the crowd. If you're in the audience, tell us, are you using AI to generate images? And if so, like what's your go-to AI to generate images at the moment? I'm personally finding I'm just using ChatGPT a lot. Like if I need an okay image, usually pop it in there. But let's go to Alex. How are you seeing companies use agents for image generation tasks and what's playing out over there?
Mm-hmm. So we've been seeing a lot of users who have been doing a lot of content creation. So things like blog posts. In particular, we have one user who had a pretty interesting Twitter bot that would find blowing up posts and reply to them and create an image and then sell T-shirts having that image. So news aware events. It was pretty funny. But on the flip side, we see a lot of developers who want image understanding. So OCR. And there's a handful of models that are quite good at that, but also being able to look at photos and spot out inconsistencies with photos and textual descriptions. And they're using agents every day to basically curate data sets to do this. And on a personal note, we also use ChatGPT's image generator in order to generate content for recap threads of news and events. So we make little Mr. Beast style posts with somebody pointing to an object looking surprised. And it's actually quite good at generating photos that look like that.
Wow, interesting. I think these hyper local models, that could run. I wonder if we'll end up seeing them on video calls where you need to generate images on the fly much quicker, and it needs to be local inference. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. Alessio, do you've already said you're a little bit bearish on open source models. So feel free to have a strong opinion about this.
Well,
does this matter?
I'm not, it's like I'm not bearish on the models themselves, but I think it's like the models are trying to make the long tail of things more efficient. And I think to me, it's like, hey, like if you already have ChatGPT, just literally use ChatGPT. It's better. Like I even cancel my Midjourney subscription and I just use ChatGPT because, hey, I don't need 10 models to test and see what comes out of it. I think there's obviously the whole community of like, Comfy UI and all the people hacking more on the image generation pipelines. I think this is great news for them. But again, yeah, to me, it's like the cutting edge is always the best place to be. And cost doesn't really matter based on my volume. If you're doing this, if you're generating an image per tweet and you're doing 10,000 images per day, maybe you do. But I think it's a great release. I'm sure people will find value out of it, but does it move the needle of like what's possible today? Probably not.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's really about the volume that this might come into play where it really matters. Getting some shout outs from the crowd. Kevin said using VO3 for video and Firefly, which is Photoshop, and a larger model for images, which is interesting. I've actually meant to sort of dig into Firefly and what Adobe's doing.
I think the best AI thing in Photoshop is the fill thing. We use Photoshop to do our YouTube thumbnail, and when I say we, I mean I. And it's nice that when you do square versus rectangular, you can kind of use their AI to like fill in and bring it to the right image size. So it's really good. It's really bad at background removal for whatever reason. Like there's so many open source great background removal models on Replicate or File that you can use, and the Photoshop one kind of sucks.
Come on, Adobe. All right, hopefully that'll improve.
Right?
I know. So Madison is saying, no, had a subpar experience that involved AI adding way too many teeth, and now I'm scarred for life. But I probably need to dip a toe back in. I wonder how many people had a scary, terrible experience with image generation and never went back. TBD. We have actually an interesting open source tool that was built inside Intel called AI Playground, and it uses Comfy and some things for image generation. So I do think there's the certain use case which is powerful. You want to generate a ton of images locally. You want it to be super fast, but probably most people are just going to be generating stuff in the cloud. So interesting to see how it plays out and how startups like Stability kind of battle it out, with Midjourney and other things like that. So all right, we're going to keep rolling to our next news story. Another open source story. Alibaba open sources Qwen 3 embedding models. So Alibaba released the Qwen 3 embedding model as open source as a push to lead in fundamental AI tools. These new models support over 100 languages, including coding languages, and provide strong multilingual and cross-lingual text representation capabilities for search retrieval. So this move basically gives developers globally a powerful free resource for building semantic search, recommendation, and code understanding features. It really underscores the trend of tech giants to open source advanced models, which kind of pushes the whole industry forward. Going to go back to the audience and just ask, is anybody using open source models? Let's go back to that question and see. It's specifically interesting. This is all about embedding, which is more relevant for RAG tasks. So Alessio, I'm going to go to you and say, number one, let's go. How much are you seeing people do traditional RAG now versus just context stuffing? And then do these kind of new embedding models that people can use open source seem to matter to you?
I'm honestly not sure. It's something that never comes up when I talk with the companies I work with. Like most of them, we talk about the model performance and kind of like tool use progress and things like that. I don't think anybody's really like, man, I wish I had a much better embedding model. I think there's companies that are focused on retrieval that don't seem to make a big deal out of this. So to me, it's always like, okay, this is maybe slightly better, but again, the problem is usually how the models use the stuff that you retrieve. It's not the quality of the retrieval. So to me, it's kind of like we're making the local maxima better, but we should come on maybe focus on something else. So I know, I'm sorry. I wish I could be more bullish on everything.
I like the VC is always a realist, so I love it. Alex, are you seeing agents use RAG and embedding models a lot, or are you starting to see context stuffing? What are you noticing on the front lines?
It's not so much RAG and context stuffing. We're seeing kind of a lot of just emergent tool use where you have kind of like smarter search rather than just embed, retrieve, more things like grep, right? Pretty common string searching. But the emerging pattern we've been seeing is they're a lot less interested in the results and a lot more interested in the citations attached to those results. So there's one thing where you have an evaluation system, but another where you have the ability to, as a return of that statement, provide citation links to specific paragraphs or sentences or even like specific numbers that have been retrieved.
Right. Yeah, actually, Alex from Anthropic, their DevRel lead, just tweeted yesterday that they saw a 90% increase in accuracy by spinning up a team of agents specifically on RAG. So it's kind of fascinating. What they did is they spun up multiple agents to do search, and then they had one agent specifically doing citations on the results to add them correctly. And I thought, wow, this feels like the future, and I'm excited to see it play out. So we're going to talk more about agents in our deep dive discussion. So I'll hold my excitement for that section. So let's close down the Techbuzz section. Really good to talk about what's happening, what the latest is. And thanks to the crowd for diving in with some of those comments. The next segment we're going to go to is a quick audience question segment. So let's head over there. All right. So what we want to do is encourage the audience and our guests, if they want to, post the big question they have about AI right now in the comments. So what is the question about AI that you have that's holding you back, that you're confused about, that you want to know more about? Post it in the comments. And what we're going to do is try to come back to that question in a future show. So post any question you have about AI. We're going to start gathering those, and in episode 5 and beyond, we're actually going to come back to those questions. So feel free to do that anytime during the show. And then what we'll do is we'll look back on those questions, and then we'll come back to them in episodes in the future and answer those. So looking forward to that. Couple example questions you may have is like, how do I pick the right model? What is RAG? How do I set up an agent? Any of those kind of things, feel free to pop in the comments, and we will log them and then come back to them in a future episode. So with that, it is time for our deep dive, which is our focused conversation on a topic we're going to be covering: AI agents. So let's head over. All right. So we've already been talking a lot about agents. Everyone's maybe tired of hearing the word agent, but I think it's going to be the future. So we're going to dive in. But specifically, we're going to talk about agents in production. Like, how are people actually doing this stuff in the real world? So for the audience, quick yes or no question. Have you tried building and deploying an AI agent? So give us a yes or no in the comments. There's no right or wrong answer. Just pop a yes or no. Are you actually using agents in the real world? So I want to go to our agent expert, Alex, first, and that should be your new title, Agent Expert Alex, just so you know. So can you tell everybody what is an agent, number one? And I know this is like a loaded question a little bit, but help define it so people know what we're talking about, and then we're going to go from there.
Yeah, sure. So at a high level, the analogy I like to use is that in the same way humans are intelligent because we have a mastery and understanding over tools, AI agents are intelligent because they have a mastery and understanding over tools. So rather than just simply getting an LLM response, usually there's some sort of series of tool calling that's enabled by it, and the agent itself can control the flow of a program such that it can accomplish its goal.
Cool. So intelligence plus tools.
Basically.
I like it. So Alessio, let's go to you. Why do you think companies are interested in agents right now? And what is the problem that you see a lot of startups trying to solve, or specific use cases that it seemed like agents solve?
I think the biggest thing about agents is the business model change. So you're going from charging per seat to now being able to charge for work done. And that's why you're seeing this one in industries that are very, headcount driven. So customer support, it's like a great example. Sales is probably going to be the next market once the models get good enough to have kind of like, persuasive conversations live. And then you're also seeing it in markets where the labor just doesn't exist. So software engineering, obviously, like we talked for years about, there's not enough engineers, like we need to hire more engineers. And now you can literally write any code that you want. But again, if you're building an IDE, you're still limited by the people that are already engineers. Versus if you're trying to do an end-to-end agent, you can unlock a lot more of the market. And that's why you see both grow so quickly, Lovable grow so quickly, all these different vibe coding tools, as well as markets like cybersecurity. There's like companies doing SOC AI where there's just not enough SOC engineers. So you're not you cannot sell a product to those companies because they don't have people on staff. And so the business model change is really like the biggest thing, and it helps you have much larger contracts early on because you're like, hey, look, you were trying to hire somebody for 100K, give us 20K, and we'll do that for you with an agent. So it's a very easy ROI, both for the buyer and the seller.
Yeah, interesting. So do you think that companies are primarily going to be using agents for their internal work? For instance, like augmenting their employees, or do you see that actually as them unlocking new potential work that they just couldn't do before? Or it's a mix, I presume.
I think companies today are not built to really capitalize on much faster growth than they have, especially in larger companies. So like if you look at any public company, you're doing these budgets and kind of like these plans like 18, 24 months in advance. So AI, the whole space is like not even that old for the good models. So I think what you're going to see now is a transition to, okay, the last 18 months, most companies have been looking at AI to save costs. So things like document translation is like huge use case. Like there's companies that are saving like tens of millions of dollars just from like translating documents. Customer support, I was already outsourcing a lot of this work anyway. I can just use AI to save money for a part of it. But now you're kind of going to the space where, hey, Intercom recently released their new numbers, and their growth just picked back up again after a few years thanks to AI. And so it's like, okay, can we use AI to grow faster? And I think the companies that are in, founder mode, so to speak, have been the ones that have been fastest to it because they don't need to go through all the committees and all of that. But I think especially in the next 12, 18 months, you'll see a lot more of that because the startups are just putting so much pressure on the incumbents. They're growing so quickly. Like GitHub Copilot, it's now under a lot of pressure from Cursor, Windsurf, and all these products. And these companies are like 2 years old. So, you can imagine the same is going to happen in a lot more markets over the next couple of years. So it's exciting to see from the startup side, but it's also like very worrying because an incumbent with AI can be pretty formidable in a lot of times. So it's scary out there. It's exciting and scary in the startup world.
It's very, very dynamic, shall we say. So Alex, you're literally the CEO of AgentOps. So your company has agent in the title. So I'm curious, I have a question about the dev side of things. So how do AI agents change a developer's workflow? So if I'm used to building web apps and building things normally, how are we seeing agents change that workflow?
So essentially you have this kind of universal function that can do a lot of stuff with strings. And just from a typing perspective, it's quite difficult to make sure that these agents steer and give you outputs that are expected. So we see a lot of developers kind of building harnesses and tools around this, countless things to discover and explore there. But in addition to that, we see a lot of things on the deployment side. So we've been playing around with a deployment product of our own. Agents as services are a new emerging pattern because generally speaking, these are workflows that can take a very, very long time to complete. Sometimes, 1 minute, sometimes 20 minutes, but enough to time out a REST request or a Lambda function. And a big challenge with this is it's just a lot of data and it takes a long time and they can fail non-deterministically. And so seeing developers like think about, okay, not in addition to actually building something end to end, how do I build the harnesses to make sure that if things fail, I'm able to kind of retry, make sure that the logic goes as expected. And then once I have the output, I'm able to evaluate that the output is correct. So there's kind of like, in addition to a software development side of things, making reliable systems, there's kind of like almost like a management side of things where it's like instructing an intern to do a task. You have to kind of aggressively monitor it until you feel confident you've built the trust to make it work.
Right. Yeah, I find it's interesting. The more I use a workflow, which I could categorize as an agent or a full-blown agent, I actually have to think more like an employer, hiring, training, and measuring an employee, right? How would you give them the right data so they can make the right choices? How would you give them the process they need to follow? And then how would you give them feedback and understand if they were succeeding or not? Which is kind of fascinating to watch that play out. So that's interesting. So are you seeing a particular, product or service that folks are using for evals right now? Is it a weave with weights and biases, or what are you noticing on that?
So I have a pretty hot take on this, which is
nice hot take.
The hot take is that evals are not a real product, and anyone who says they're selling it is actually selling something else.
Interesting.
They're selling logging. Logging is a very sticky product, and for context, AgentOps, we very much focus on logging because we think it's the core way to build a good product by understanding what your agents are doing before you put them in production. And the reason why I say evals are a very big kind of like, and I wouldn't say a scam, right? But like it's a big problem is evals are too core to what you're building as a product owner to outsource to a vendor, right? It's like, imagine having a QA team that has never used your product before, suddenly QA your product. It's like, this is something that you need to own internally in your organization. And the metrics by which you rate the value your product's delivering is something only you can really know, right? You talk to your customers, they give you feedback, or you just use the thing yourself and you can kind of find the idiosyncrasies of what's right and what's wrong. The scores, the metrics, LLM as judge, they might work for some niche scenarios, but there's no one size fits all tool. And it's really important as a developer to work with your team to figure out a mechanism that's going to deliver value and quality at the same time.
Yeah. Wow. It's a good hot take. Evals are not the point, but actually it's the core logging understanding of actually what's happening, which does make sense. It forces ownership where you're like, I actually understand what's going on. We've got some folks chiming in whether they've built agents in prod. Kevin says no. Tame Crazy says no. I think, there's a lot of excitement. Like I see in the enterprise side, there's a lot of excitement about it, but actually not as much building, which is a huge opportunity because I think there is. So Alessio, going to you, you have a pretty broad view as an investor, so you see a lot. When you see startups, are they pitching AI agent driven products? What are you seeing on the front lines here with agents?
I think everybody now calls everything an agent. So I think at least maybe 12 months ago, there was like, okay, this is a co-pilot, this is an agent. Today it's all agents, even if they're co-pilots. So I think that's the first barrier to get through. It's like, okay, can this thing actually do work on itself, or is it just a tool that people use? Yep. And then I think for us, it's like, okay, what are like the things that we believe to be true about the models? Which is, for us, is like, the models are great at coding. The models are pretty good at tool use. So when it comes to, running code and doing math, they can be pretty good at that. I don't think the models are necessarily pretty good at understanding taste and human preference. So I think if you're trying to build an agent that at the core is trying to be, decide what's good, what's not for somebody, that's usually not going to work. And then how long of an horizon do you actually need to get to an answer for this task? And I think that kind of ties into, whether or not you can build environments to do, reinforcement fine tuning and kind of like some of the work to get the models better at certain tasks. So if the task is, can you do this GitHub ticket? I think that's pretty easy to do. If the task is create a company, that's kind of impossible. And so I think there's kind of like, how do you kind of understand where we are at the frontier? And that's why we spend so much time with latent space and kind of like with the technical work that we do, actually being hands-on with the models and have a strong opinion of that. But that changes again. Tomorrow they might release 04 Pro, and it's like, okay, well, we kind of rechange the whole mental model. So you gotta think on your feet.
Yeah, it is wild. It's like you're continually getting smarter and smarter people that you can call upon for tasks, right? And then, what do you do with that, and how do you instrument that, and how do you measure that? Yeah, it is a fascinating time to be building companies. Alex, so let's get practical. Suppose a CEO watches this and they want to deploy their first AI agent in prod. What's something that you should piece of advice that you can give them?
So I would very, very first thing is constrain the use case. A big challenge with kind of the lingo around agents is that it's supposed to solve everything. And if it solves everything, it solves nothing. So really think about it as taking a standard workflow process or a chatbot, right? And figuring out like, how can these AI tools either augment or replace the operation that you're working on? So that's kind of like the very first thing, is really kind of defining the value space that you're focusing on. The second is really coming up with a good, robust like logging system, right? So obviously it's the part where I show my product, but we use AgentOps to observe agents to see where they're going in circles. But a big challenge of these systems is that you want an audit trail, so that it's never a complete process when you use these agents, because you're going to want to upgrade the models over time. You're going to want to change providers. You're going to have different data sets. They're fundamentally dynamic systems. So you want a way that you can actually go and see how they're performing, how users are interacting with them, and whether they're staying up to the standard. So just think of it as a continuous process. In the classic ML ops world, we have this idea of data drift, right? Where you train a model in the lab, and once you deploy it, it might work for a while, but fundamentally user preferences change over time, or the data that is classifying on changes over time. And you need to constantly update and adjust these priors. So thinking about it as a continuous system, more so than a once and done static service, is kind of the right mindset. We suggest logging with that. Having a good observability platform is quite helpful. But really think about having a team that's going to actively manage it is the core unlock.
Wow, that's great. So first lesson is constrain. I love that. Very simple and practical. Thank you. So Alessio, from the VC side of things, how do you factor in risk in this? So like when you're looking at a startup, they're all in on agent. How much do you think about the risk that they're introducing, and whether or not that will put them outside of your investment thesis or not?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the infrastructure around it. I just talked to a founder a couple of weeks ago doing an insurance company for AI agents. So if you're an agent company selling an agent,
interesting.
You can kind of insure it with this company, so that then you can go to the buyer and be like, hey, we're insured for like up to like 500K of damages or like whatever. So I think there's, in the short term, there's kind of like the financial component of what's the blast zone of these agents. I think again, using the coding example, the blast zone is like 0, right? Because if you don't merge the code, nothing happens. So they can be as crazy as they want. Yep. If you're doing a sales rep, it could sell things that don't exist. It could sell things for a price that you don't want. I think the risk is much higher in that case. So, but we're obviously, we all invest at seed basically and some Series A's. So for us, we're always investing in things that don't work.
Right.
We're not really trying to invest in something that works today. We're trying to figure out in 12, 18 months, what are the things that are going to work that we should build towards. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think the question is very specific to the industry, and it's very specific to the founders, like, do you have some unique insight about this space? And are you doing it because you think the VCs think that it's a good idea, so they'll give you money today? Or are you doing it because you have conviction that this is going to be successful in the long term? And yeah, I mean, we're professionally trained to suss that out, basically. And some people are really good at making you believe that they actually believe something versus they just think it's the current thing. And so they try to raise money for that. But that's why you see a lot of kind of like, fast growth and kind of like fast flame out of AI first things.
Yep. Yeah. So pro tip for everybody listening, you shouldn't be trying to pitch a problem you think the VC cares about. You should be pitching a problem that you are passionate about and you can solve. So I love that. Well, clearly agents are the future. I think we're all seeing the reality that we can spin up intelligence, solving problems on demand. it's a very exciting time to be alive, very disruptive as well, and fascinating. So that closes up our deep dive discussion today. Enjoyed kind of going deep on where we're going with agents. Appreciate both Alessio and Alex really chiming in and guiding us on that. Looking forward to talking more in the future. Next up, we have an audience game, Fact or Fiction. So get your fingers ready to bash on that keyboard. Let's go to the game. All right, so we're going to call on the audience and our guests for this. We're going to have some fun with a fact or fiction game. Here's how it works. So I'm going to read out a statement about tech or AI, and then in chat, you just have to type fact or fiction. Some of these are almost unbelievable, so let's test everybody's knowledge. And there's no, you can't look dumb. Don't worry, I promise. So here we go. Statement 1. More than half of all new code written in 2025 has been generated by AI. So pop in the chat, fact or fiction. What do you think? Fact or fiction? More than half of the code written in 2025 has been generated by AI. Wantifizer says actual fact. We'll see. I'm waiting for comments from our guests as well. Lakshmi says fiction.
It's fact for me. I mean, for me, it's much higher than 50. But I think it depends how big of a, how many people you're looking at.
Yeah, I just posted fact because I think 99.9% of my code is written by AI. So Sean says fact. Chelsea says fact. Dame Craziness says fact. Yeah, we got a lot of fact here. All right. So the actual answer, drum roll, it's fiction. But this is for the industry whole wide. I think Alessio points out a good point. It kind of depends who is answering. So while AI code generation is huge and growing, it's not over 50% yet. So recent data suggests it's around 30 to 40% on GitHub. So not quite the majority. We're getting there. So you get a +1 if you answered fiction. If you answered fact for you personally and it's correct for you, then that's fine. It's definitely a fact for me. So, all right. Statement number 2. Get ready. A Chinese gaming company appointed an AI as its CEO. Could that be true? An actual AI running a company as the boss? Fact or fiction? Pop it in there. Alessio, are you an AI? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, you got me. You got me.
All right. So Wantifizer says true. Let's see what other kind of comments.
It would be funny to get fired by an AI. Yeah, it's like, hey, can I talk to you? You're gone.
Yeah.
You're out.
Yeah, you're out. At least, hopefully, they'd be humane about it. But they would have time to talk about it. That's for sure. Chelsea says fiction. Lakshmi says fact. Ava says fact. All right. So let's dive into the actual answer. This one is real. The company is NetDragon Websoft. And in 2022, they named an AI avatar called Miss Tang Yu as an honorary CEO. Apparently, she or it contributes to workflow and efficiency. So yes, an AI CEO actually exists. If you said fact, you got it. Now, a little comment. This is obviously a media stunt, so I'm proud of them for doing that. So there we go. That was statement number 2. Statement number 3. Scientists have an AI that can read your thoughts from brain scans. So have scientists actually used an AI that can read your thoughts from brain scans? Fact or fiction? Let's see what everybody says in the comments. Alex, I'm going to go to you live. What's your live answer on this, fact or fiction?
Well, I thought this is definitely true, right? I guess it depends on what you mean by brain scan. But I've seen these little headbands people wear that supposedly can perform actions and whatnot. So
all right, so you're going fact.
Yeah,
maybe we'll see. We'll know in a second. Alessio, live. What fact or fiction here?
Fact. Still facty. I mean, if you get Neuralink, that's got to be a fact.
Right? All right. Yeah, I think so. So from the crowd, Wantifizer says true. Tame Craziness says fact. Lakshmi fact. Ava fact. Chelsea fact. All right, everyone thinks this is a fact. So let's go to the answer. This one is actually a fact in a research sense. So scientists have deployed AI models that analyze fMRI brain scan data and can predict and reconstruct the words or images that the person is thinking. So it's not technically mind reading, but it's a big step. And one model actually translated brain activity into text with surprising accuracy. So kind of cool, kind of scary fact. So here we go. Next up, your spouse is going to be able to wear one of these things and know what you're thinking. So watch out, everybody. Okay, statement 4. The FDA has fully approved a drug that was invented by AI. So the statement is the FDA has fully approved a drug that was invented by AI, fact or fiction. Let's see what everybody believes on this. Quantifier says fact.
The genetic drug.
Yep. Alex, what do you think? Fact or fiction?
It's probably fiction. I mean, look, FDA approvals take how many years? And AI for 2. So
Yes.
regulations alone, I can't believe it.
All right. So Chelsea agrees with you, fiction. Madison LaRoche says, please no. Meg says fiction. I love it. Tim Crazen says, taking the fifth on it. Alessio, fact or fiction?
This is what I was talking about, trying to suss things out. I think the fully in this question is like really the key word.
Okay.
Fully. If you didn't say fully, I would have said fact, but since you said fully, I say fiction.
Okay. All right. You're going the safe route. Let's go to the answer. The answer is fiction. No, AI invented drug has been officially approved by the FDA yet. They're still being tested for safety and efficacy. So Alessio, you nailed it. The proof was in the details. So good job if you answered fiction on that. We've got one more statement. Statement 5. This is the most important one. Fact or fiction, everybody. Someone actually married an AI chatbot. Fact or fiction? Did a human legally or symbolically marry an AI? What do you think?
It has to be true. I mean, people that marry like anime characters and like plushies and everything in the past. This has to be fact.
So you think it's true? Chelsea says legally ? Lakshmi says true. Alex, what, fact or fiction?
Well, I think it depends on your jurisdiction, but yeah, I mean, they've married. I've seen somebody married an alarm clock anime figurine before, so there's no doubt in my mind that at least in some country it's been done.
I love it. So Tim Crazy says, was it in Japan? Then true. So I can't. Why would you marry your alarm clock? I can't figure that one out. Keeps you on time for things. So, all right, let's see if we got any more comments from the crowd. Meg says, legally, not sure if it counts, but I'm sure they would have tried. I love it. So, believe it or not, the answer to statement 5, has someone married an AI, is fact. So there have been a few reported cases. For instance, a woman made headlines for holding a ceremony to marry her AI chatbot companion, but it wasn't a legally recognized marriage. No, the government isn't issuing marriage licenses to robots yet or agents, but it was a personal commitment ceremony. So there we go. People are marrying agents. So, Alex, you have a new line of business to explore here. So, so that is the conclusion of our bonkers fact or fiction game. Thanks everybody for chiming in. Alessio, you officially won with your very careful statements. So well done. Classic. I love it. Well, that's it for the show, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Went through everything from Nerd Alert to all the major stories in Techbuzz. Really appreciate both Alessio and Alex being here. Make sure to listen to number 1 Latent Space podcast is awesome. So Alessio is the co-host on that. If you've got a good idea, maybe pitch him, see if he responds to DMs on X. And then Alex, appreciate you being here for AgentOps. Everybody, if you want to know about agents, please follow Alex. So we've got another show coming at you, episode 5. Can't wait to see you then. So don't forget to tune in for that. Everybody, do me a quick favor and subscribe, and hit that notification button. So love for you to be here live. Love to chat with you in the comments. Thanks for everybody for being so involved. And we're going to come back and answer some of your questions live in episode 5. Also want to thank my amazing production crew. They help make the magic happen. So that is it. Make sure to follow us and subscribe, and we will see you on the next show, episode 5. Meanwhile, stay curious, keep innovating, and we'll catch you next time on Tech Tab. Take care, everybody.